Hello, everybody. Welcome to NFL Total Access. I'm Rhett Lewis. Coach Brian Billick and Bucky Brooks will be along here shortly on one of the landmark days of the NFL calendar because we get to fill out the remaining blanks on that calendar. It is schedule release day, and at the top of the hour, you will learn all 256 games of this 2020 regular season schedule. We know that as of now, it's scheduled to start on September 10th and will finish in Tampa, Florida on February 7th with Super Bowl 55. And you get just about everything in between coming up in our 3-hour special at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, we will keep you company. And with that, let's welcome in our NFL Network insider, Ian Rapoport. And Ian, the league, in advance of the schedule release, later tonight, sent a memo to all 32 teams detailing the guidelines for a phased reopening of all the club facilities. What more have you learned on that front?
A safe and equitable reopening of the facilities, which of course have been closed uniformly since late March. This is about Roger Goodell laying out for teams, team presidents, and other assorted members of personnel staffs how this would actually happen. Teams were instructed to have their guidelines, their protocols in place by May 15th in advance of the virtual league meeting a couple days later. Not that facilities would necessarily be open at that point, just to have them ready. And by the way, as the NFL works with state and federal officials on this, every facility would have to be able to open at the same time in order for one to be open. There's some clarity there. This, of course, would not necessarily include fully healthy players right now. Players who have been rehabbing would be allowed in the building. 50 or so other members of the organization would be allowed under certain guidelines, including but not limited to wearing a cloth over your face or some sort of mask, and daily screenings of every employee who walks in the building.
And again, would be an equitable opening of all 32 club facilities or none until all are available. The Baltimore Ravens now dealing with an off-the-field issue here, Ian. Police are saying that their safety, Earl Thomas, was the victim of burglary and intent to assault in a domestic dispute in which Earl Thomas's wife ended up being arrested. What more have you learned there?
And this is something the Baltimore Ravens recently put out a statement saying they just learned of this via media reports late last night. One of those reports was Earl Thomas himself going to Instagram and detailing very briefly an incident with his wife. TMZ then came out with the details. We now have more via the Austin police. This was from an incident from several weeks ago, and his wife was Nina was charged with intent to commit aggravated assault, also burglary of a residence with intent to commit aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Apparently she held a gun just inches from Earl Thomas's head. The magazine was out, but there was a bullet in the chamber. At this point, those are basically the details we know, and obviously when we have more, we will give them to you.
Okay, Ian, elsewhere on the football front, Cam Newton has now watched Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton sign new contracts with new teams to essentially be backups. What's Cam Newton's mindset here?
The whole thought the entire time was that Cam Newton wanted to be a starter and should be a starter. All that is true, but my understanding is he now would in fact be willing to accept a backup job under a perfect situation. Very few teams could do this. Most teams have their starters and backups set, but at the least, Newton would be open to being a backup, then maybe with a chance to be the starter either pretty close or potentially the year after.
NFL Network insider Ian Rapoport there with the latest for us around the league. Thanks, Ian. The 20
after. So it really becomes real now, and the fact that I can dive into putting my schedules together, that was an exciting time for me.
Coach, you talk about the exciting time being able to put your schedule together. I think for the players, It's all about identifying when is the bye week. When are we going to get the break in the season where we kind of recharge and gear up for the final stretch? It's also about finding those division games. Every coach will stand at the front of the room and talk about, we have to win the division. That's the easiest way to get into the playoffs. And finally, as a player, you love the primetime games. When are we going to play on the big stage so everyone can see us? Those are the things that we look for when we dig into the schedules.
I love it. So coach is looking at the logistics and Bucky, the player, looking at the prime time matchups. It just about makes sense there. But guys, look, with respect to the first 16 weeks of the regular season, I'm looking forward to the last week of the regular season, week 17, laying it all out on the line, seeing how the Seahawks and the 49ers wrapped up the regular season a year ago. Man, sign me up for that if we get that again. So I think, Bucky, I'm also looking forward to what matchups we see in week 17 and trying to predict which ones could have the most on the line in that final week.
Yeah, Red, remember, because you got a new playoff format. We have 14 teams, only one team in each conference gets the bye. So everyone is going to be going all out to make sure they can get that number one seed or the change of positioning. So yeah, week 17 takes on added significance with the new schedule.
No question, adding an additional team into the playoff field in each conference is going to make for an even more exciting Week 17 in the NFL. All right, guys, we're just getting started here on NFL Total Access. When we come back, a special guest whose value to the Bears can be summed up in one stat: targets. Allen Robinson had 154 last season, third highest number in the entire league. But after the break, why the word on Robinson's mind isn't reception.